The killing of MLK Jr.
Hmm.
We are told that it was this random guy who happened to have a couple of extra passports on him that day.
Yeah.
Is he the murderer of MLK Jr.?
No, that was a CI operation because they considered him a dangerous communist. And both the FBI was bugging in churches where he was giving some of his speeches in churches. They were bugging the podiums and following him around. He was a top target for elimination. So, and what the CIA does is CIA specifically, and sometimes the FBI, there's always a boogeyman. There's always one person. Well, this person did. Osama bin Laden did it. So let's move on. We got him. So it's over. They always have one person that's their MO. That's a scapegoat. We got him. The whole operation is over. We solved it. Now forget about it. And that was the case with Martin Luther King. Same MO. They used that same MO over and over and over. Timothy McVeigh. He was the only one that did
Forgot
it.
about that. Timothy McVeigh.
Yeah,
Yeah, he was MK Ultra.
and there were other bombs in the building that were reported initially and then deleted from the media coverage, and on and on and on we go.
Okay. JFK.
Hmm.
We are told that this guy just shot him, and then another guy heroically shot the guy who shot the guy. And then, as you learn in the Chaos book, was visited by Jolly West while he was in prison, and then he was suddenly insane the next day when the judge saw him. Who was involved? Do you believe the official storyline of how JFK was killed?
Absolutely not. For starters, have you read the book The Secret Team by Fletcher Prouty? Oh, I would recommend that book to everybody. Fletcher Prouty had high-level access in Department of Defense and CIA tickets, but they forgot to get him to sign a non-disclosure agreement. So when he saw all this and how they played all these things, he came out and he wrote The Secret Team. And in The Secret Team is his witness account of the JFK assassination. And there was a well-known CIA operator from Vietnam up until that point named Edward Lansdale. And there's a photograph of the three mysterious men being walked by the sheriff in front of the book depository. And walking by them, as one of them smiled, was Edward Lansdale, well-known CIA operative. And Prouty worked with him. He knew what he looked from behind. He knew about the ring on his finger. And he identified Lansdale as a CIA operative. George Bush made this mysterious phone call that day, claiming that he was in Dallas. Now, George H.W. Bush, longtime CIA operative, although he tried to deny it. He going all the way back to the Cuban Missile Crisis. He was a CIA operative. And when he was president, CIA in the White House, aka Iran-Contra, and then they promoted him. So Edward Lansdale was there. There's no question about that. Bush called in and said, I think something may happen today, and I don't know. I just wanted to warn you about it. I'm in Wisconsin or wherever he said he was. He was in Dallas, Texas, and phoning in a fake phone call that day. Oswald, without question, had been recruited by the CIA, sent over to Russia to try to be a double agent, and came back. Was he the only shooter? Absolutely not. The CIA was then working with the mafia, and JFK had fired Allen Dulles, the devil incarnate, as we've called him. And Allen Dulles, he fired Allen Dulles. So Allen Dulles was having secret meetings with other CIA officials that were now out of there, how to get rid of JFK, because he was his arch enemy. He fired him. This guy was a power-hungry director. So they were having meetings on how to get rid of JFK rather. And so when the murder happened and the Warren Commission was put together, guess who was in charge of the Warren Commission?
Allen Dulles.
Allen Dulles, who coached all the CIA witnesses what to say, what not to say, and forbade some of the others from even testifying at all. They put the fox in charge of the hen house. I mean, come on. And then the questions they asked, as you know, were just absolutely ridiculous. So, yeah, I think that was a CIA hit, and they may have employed some mafia connections to carry it out because that was their mafia assassination program.
Exactly, and LBJ was very involved in all that in Dallas. And so
he was an evil man.
He was an evil man. I believe he knew that he was going to get shot because they wanted him in the position, because they wanted to go to war every single time. When they decide they want war, and what did LBJ do? Henry Kissinger, that they just went to town in Vietnam, went to town in Cambodia. I mean, they just didn't stop. The murder of Americans, not realizing that this is how things work. Okay, what about Pearl Harbor?
Pearl Harbor, Admiral Ace Lyons. I don't know if you've heard of Admiral Ace Lyons. I had a radio program called The Intelligence Hour several years ago, and Ace had become a friend of mine because we were working on exposing Benghazi. And Ace Lyons was commander of the Pacific Fleet back during that time. And I asked Ace Lyons about Pearl Harbor, and he goes, I am still angry to this day. And I said, why? He goes, because they knew the attack was coming. They knew where it was going to happen in Pearl Harbor and when. And they told no one, and they let it happen on purpose. That's from the commander of the Pacific Fleet. I would say that's a pretty credible witness. So yeah, that was a false
And they've
flag event.
admitted that. They admitted they heard it was going to happen. And, how else were you going to get Americans to be on the side of this war? That had nothing to do with us,
Exactly. And that MO is repeated on and on and on and on and up through Iraq, where the Pentagon even had the Pentagon Analyst Program, and they were going on Fox News, and all these generals that were recruited in this propaganda effort, going on pushing the Iraq War. You remember on Fox News and others, these generals on promoting. Well, that was a propaganda operation by the Department of Defense called the Pentagon Analyst Program. So
this is why you have to learn about Sigmund Freud, and then behind him Edward Bernays, and learn about the World War II propaganda.
Yeah.
Make people every day just see Germans as the enemy, enemy, enemy. Then we have this big event happen, and the boys sign up, and they go to war, and they get killed, and it is the exact same thing every time. Remarkable intelligence failure. Now we're being drafted in because we have a right to defend ourselves, and we must get involved now with this war that has nothing to do with us. And now we're in the Middle East, which is nowhere near us, but and so, which brings us to 9/11. Your opinion?
My opinion, as a criminal investigator, as a former CI officer, 9/11 was not the act of a bunch of poorly flight-trained terrorists that executed an unbelievably meticulous piloting of those aircraft. Even pilots, there's pilots for 9/11 Truth now, and they say we could not have done that. Experienced pilots could not have made those maneuvers. Not possible. And then we go to the passport issue, and we go to the Tower 7, which was a controlled demolition.
Obviously.
You talk to any structural engineer, and I have. Well, that was a controlled demolition. I mean, it was perfect. And then you look at the facts that just don't add up, and the facts that were left out of the 9/11 Commission report, and then the ridiculous claims they made, the lack of airplane parts, no landing gear, no engines, which we talked about. So all of that put together, and the fact, I think George W. Bush blacked out, I think it was 40 pages of the 9/11 report dealing with Saudi Arabia. And the report came out, the 9/11 Commission report came out, but those pages were blacked out, and he refused to unredact them. So wait a minute, this report was supposed to be for the American people on what happened, and you blacked all these pages out? What in the world? I do not think that it was a bunch of poorly trained or untrained terrorists that did it. I think there was another source behind it. I think it was intentional. And I'm going just from a criminal investigative perspective, just looking at the evidence, what evidence we have, that was an intentional act. And it would fall right into the MO that you and I are talking about. Horrible event, because human life does not matter to the shadow government deep state, or especially the CIA. It does not matter. They're pawns on their chessboard. They don't care that 3,000 people were horribly killed that day, but it achieved the aim of gutting the U.S. Constitution, bringing in the horrific Patriot Act, giving the CIA unthinkable authority for secret prisons and torture beyond waterboarding and secret renditions and all of that. The FBI, the ability to spy on Americans, came out of the Patriot Act. So it was the perfect national security state energizer that the Patriot Act was, and 70 of the congressmen and senators that read the Patriot Act didn't even read it. They just signed off on it without even reading the bill. So, yeah, I mean, that's my view, and it's
my view as well.
Just factually.
The economy has been a major burden on the average American. Wages are flat, expenses are up, and it is very hard to manage to pay all the bills without using credit cards.